Okay, this is chapter 9 of Factfulness by Hans Rosling, The Blame Instinct by Lyndon and Ben. Mhm.
Let's start introducing our presentation by breaking it down to four main parts. So the first part is about the blame instinct and the explanations. Second part is why do we blame and the psychological roots behind that. And the third part is the consequence of the blame instinct. And finally, resisting the blame instinct.
Okay, number 1, what is the blame instinct? So, the blame instinct is basically our need to find a simple cause for complex problems. We try to find something that we can blame easily. It's a natural defense against discomfort, and it's also an urge to identify a good guy and a bad guy because it's easier that way.
The second part, why do we blame? So we blame is because it makes the world feels more predictable, and it is what it provides us with cognitive ease and our desire for quick answer. The blame instincts also is a cognitive bias that leads us to assign blame or responsibility to a single individual or group. This instinct allows us to feel like, okay, we've solved the problem. And also, what the fundamental human desire for fairness, justice, and accountability is like a psychological shield, a natural response, like a fight to flight responses. You can think it that way. And it helps simplifies the complex issue by just finding a scapegoat, for example, like an organization, the government, or a nation to take the blame and to simplify the solutions. And the media is always behind controlling the news. The media will crave your attention, so they will exaggerate information when they have their hands on. Be careful what you read. So next up is we need to do case studies related to the blame instinct. The first part is individuals versus the system. Blaming lazy poor people for their situation, ignoring broader systematic failures. And this narrow view prevents understanding root causes of effective solution. And not only that example, we also have other example. For example, like the Ebola outbreak, people blame the local workers or politician instead of seeing the weak health infrastructures and car accidents. We blame the bad drivers for ignoring the systematic road design issue. And when it comes to company scandals, one bad CEO often becomes the scapegoat instead of analyzing the corporate cultures or incentives. Which we will move on to our next part is collective scapegoating. Uh, Collective scapegoating, which attribute to complex global issue to an entire group or nation, oversimplifies reality. So, in the book, the author actually mentioned one of the stories where, when he lectures about India or China, that he about the Indian official that he previously mentioned in chapter 5. Um, one of the student or the lady stood up and saying that, okay, India and China are responsible for the most CO2 emission, and they can't live like us. We can't let them continue to develop like this. Their emission will kill the planet. So this overlooks the diverse factors and shared responsibility between other nations. Not only India and China are the one who mainly responsible for CO2 emission, but we are too. We are the one who also contributing to global CO2 emission too. And not only that, she need to do more research and look at things in many different perspective in order to see that not only China and India are responsible for global warming. Like shipments consume, like shipments also one of the cause for CO2 equipment, CO2 emission. I'm sorry, traveling, manufacturing, and blah blah blah. Man, Culturals also uh, play a very important role in the blame element in the blame instinct too. Historical elements are one of the things, and relying solely on one viewpoint for historical events distort understanding. It limits comprehensive learning and critical assessment of the past situation, which again returns to the conversations with Han Rosling and student about the CO2 emission. Um, she should basically do more research. And one of the quote that I especially like about this one, about the book, is that look for causes, not villain. Instead of spend your energy understanding the multiple interaction costs so system to create the situation. Next up is the consequences of the blame instinct. So it hinders problem solving skills. It blocks ineffective action and innovation. It slows down progress and learning. It focuses on faults, not solutions. When we actually only focuses on one person and blaming them for their fault, we would actually exaggerate that fault. We would think, okay, you create the problem. You should be the one solving it. We're not the one doing that. It's a you problem, not a us problem. So you should be the one doing that, which actually hinders our ability to do any progress, learning, and finding effective solutions or effective action and innovation. Second part is fueling prejudice and division. It creates the us versus them narratives, which again return to the conversations with the student in hand washing. As I've mentioned before, she identifies China and India as them, but she and the other people as us. This creates, this promotes unfair scapegoating, and it damages collaboration and trust. So finally, misgenuine understanding. It prevents empathetic insights, limit alternative perspective, and hinders personal and collective growth.
Okay, number 4, resisting the blame instinct. So basically the problem is that when we identify the bad guy, we think that we figured out the problem, but in reality it's a lot more complicated than that, and we can't just stop on the fact that like there's a bad guy when most of the time it makes a lot more sense. A quote from Hans Rosling himself is to control the blame instinct, resist finding a scapegoat. Thank you.